Hello everyone, my name is Loco and welcome to a best of 5 series of top level StarCraft 2. Now what I've got for you today is a match that many people consider to be the greatest series of 2025 so far. It's time for a Terran versus Zerg played at the Esports World Cup. And spotting right here in the bottom left, playing with the blue SCVs, we have the #1 Terran player from South Korea, and he goes by the name of Maru. His opponent all the way in the top left-hand corner of Persephone with the red Zerg drones from Italy. We have Reynor. Now, if you don't have time to watch this entire series, I mean, I recommend the whole thing because it's phenomenal. But at the very least, check out game number 2. Game number 2, maybe I shouldn't even say this. Maybe this is bad for my own video performance. But anyways, game number 2 in this series is honestly... I mean, I know I say this quite frequently, but it is one of the games of the year. I highly recommend you just check out the whole thing because the entire series is superb. But this is a best of 5 that was played at the EWC. That means that there's $700,000 on the line in total for one event. Both of these players were in very good shape. I've already covered quite a few of Reynor's games as of late. And he has been, looking pretty much better than ever before, right? I mean, across the board, he has just been looking so powerful. Now, because I was one of the commentators for the EWC, because I was there and I was casting while these games were being played, I remember the majority of it, but as per usual, it is still fun to experience it. And I can imagine not everybody has necessarily seen these games in depth just yet. And truth be told, even when you are there as a caster, you still miss a lot of stuff. Like, there's a lot of things that happen throughout the game of, well, StarCraft 2. And obviously, we usually have a observer, like a dedicated observer. For this particular tournament, even, we had 2. And they're effectively like the cameramen for the in-game action. And you do end up looking at other stuff when you are observing games yourself. I, for example, spent an awful lot of time looking at the early game Reapers. And sometimes I scroll away from fights and people are like, Loco, why would you do that? Why would you look away from the fight? And in my mind, the fight had already been decided before it started. So there's no point looking at it. It's a bit of a bad habit of mine. But anyways, it is fun to have a look at these games a second time around. And, well, I can imagine a lot of you are gonna get a kick out of this one too, because it really is a bit of a banger. Now we're starting off with a very normal build for the both of them. It is going to be a triple command center start right here for Maru. He's decided to build the 3rd CC as part of the wall off. A little bit odd, a little bit strange. Doesn't really matter all too much, and honestly I guess it is too far forward anyways to really be a proper wall off. Maybe this is just in case the Overlord scout is gonna be coming in from the side, right? There's always that little Overlord scouting meta on every single map where Zerg players have a default for the way in which they spread around their Overlords. And you try to play around that as a Terran player. Like, if you assume that Reynor is going to go for the suboptimal path with the Overlord scout, as he seems to be doing right now, this 3rd command center may remain hidden for just a little bit longer. Even though it doesn't really matter all too much. If you have all the time in the world, you may as well go ahead and give it a shot. Now, would you look at this? There's a 2nd factory building in the back of the main base. 3rd factory added into the mix as well. Maru is a Cyclone guy. Even though he made a name for himself by being one of the very best hyper-aggressive bio players, he's very good at playing Terran mech as well. And he showcased this throughout the EWC, that he is very fond of currently playing this particular playstyle. Now, I don't remember exactly what strats he went for in what games. I just remember that he is a big fan of the Cyclone. Let's just call it as it is. He does enjoy the Cyclone quite a bit at this point in time. Reynor's going to try and get the scout off, but with 2 Marines gunning down the Overlord, no, he's not going to get too far. Did he at the very least see the command center there? Yeah, he did see the CC on the low ground, so that is something, but you really want to know whether or not you can expect Terran mech. Now, because Zerg players can't reliably figure this out every single time, they've been going for a quick Roach Warren. So Roach Warren openers, super popular in the current meta. Reynor did decide to go for the variant where he does get the Zergling speed early on, so this is pretty safe, all things considered. But of course, I mean, when your opponent is making a whole lot of Hellions already, you do have to make sure that your Zerglings are going to be in the right place at the right time. And Blue Flame is getting researched here as the very first upgrade for Maru. Normally, you go for the Cyclone lock-on upgrade, but not in this particular instance. Maru, though, wants to go for the drive-by straight into the natural. He's anticipating that there might not be Zergling speed. Good surround so far, though. Nice pre-splitting right there by Reynor, but still, the Hellions are going to slip in. We do have an Evo Chamber trying to block the pathing. He wants to stay away from those Queens, though, to the best of his abilities. There is creep connecting the main and the natural, but the Queens are still taking a long time trying to make their way up to the high ground. Misfire right there from Maru, though. I think if he would have stuck around to the natural, there was a lot of potential for him to get way more thus far. Yeah, and eventually, these Hellions are gonna get cleaned up. Blue Flame got cancelled as well. And was this worth it here for Maru? Not at all. Not at all. Losing 12 Hellions for only 5 drones. And obviously the Zerglings are not to be entirely ignored here. But this is about the best case defense here for Reynor. Considering he did not know about the additional factories hiding in the back. And considering that, well, originally he was caught way off guard. Those Queens were not in the right spot. The Zerglings did buy quite a bit of time, but I think Maru should have gone for the drones in the natural expansion. Maybe he assumed, though, that there was going to be another one of those Evo Chambers blocking off the pathing altogether. Okay. So Reynor escapes death. That's nice. Cyclones are going to be following this up, though. And we have the Roach Warren researching speed, and then also Burrow researching inside of one of the hatcheries. Zergling run by attempted on the other side of the map in the meantime, but Hellions are going to be able to catch up pretty easily. There's a 4th hatchery all the way in the top right-hand corner too, and this is one of those bases that is quite difficult. Ooh, little pop by the healing shrine here, but there is that location in the top right. Not particularly easy for Maru to reach it, but it is still a possible target, and he's even decided to bring the barracks to the front right now. If this wasn't already 100% clear to Reynor that it was going to be Terran mech, seeing the barracks fly around is a very clear indicator. Honestly, you don't really want to lose the barracks either, because currently he's sitting at 5 factories. He's probably going to want to stop at about 8, and you do need to have a barracks in order to make a factory, so bit of an overextension right here by Maru, honestly. Yeah, he's already starting up a new one over at the 3rd, using it as a spotter, but I don't think he wants to drop down a mule for it. It just doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. Hellions and Cyclones, though, going around the site. Zerglings here have not quite seen it. Okay, base in the top right gets spotted. Only a single drone available for the time being. We do get a scan here, and he sees that there's a bunch of creep tumors, but also a few Hellions. Nice split off right there, though, from Maru, using the fast-moving units here instead. We have the 4th command center already finishing up. Roach drops are gonna be happening inside of the main base here, it looks like, in just a moment. And yeah, there's the additional factories right now building. So we are gonna go up to a grand total of 8 with that new barracks finishing up. Okay. Blue Flame researching once more. Tunneling Claws coming up as well here for Reynor. He's got a Zergling blocking the potential 4th. Slow Overlord will be making its way here eventually. Yeah, it doesn't have pneumatized carapace, but still a little bit quicker than a regular Overlord. It's actually kind of an underutilized ability. We pretty much only see Roach drops with the with the Overlord speed upgrade finished, but this is still something that can sort of work. You just have to pre-plan it quite a bit in advance. Either way, the Roaches are going to arrive, and this is mostly just here as a distraction. Keep in mind, though, that Burrow is done at this point, right? And that's super annoying for Terran. Terrans refuse going. There we go. They refuse going for Ravens, and if you don't make Ravens, and you lose a bunch of Cyclones in the middle of the map because you're distracted, these type of plays can be absolutely amazing for the Zerg. He's already tunneling them every which way, though, trying to avoid one scan radius, right? So that's the real problem. If you have to scan like 6 times to kill 4 Roaches, that is obviously a lot of resources lost. In the meantime, though, speaking of resources lost, yeah, overly ambitious. If there was a scan available, Maru could have actually killed the majority of those Roaches as well. Looks like Command Center number 5 is done, though, and Roaches over here are getting cleaned up. But Reynor got a respectable amount of damage done with units that usually do fall off in just a few minutes from now. So not bad. Okay. It's going to be a Hydra Viper transition. We do not yet have a Lurker Den, so for the time being, it's just going to be a Roach Hydra with Viper for support, and Terran is just doubling down on that mass Cyclone army that they have been very fond of. But this has now been a second armory as well here for Maru, so he's actually gone for the +1 vehicle attacks as well. That doesn't really benefit the Cyclones very much, but it greatly benefits all of the other mechanical units, and Maru's going to try and see if he can potentially get a stranglehold on this base. It looks like that's going to be achieved with ease. Not a whole lot that Zerg can do about this without Vipers that have energy, but they do have energy right now. The hatchery was sacrificed, but he's going to get a whole lot of Cyclones here for his troubles. Looks like the Roach Hydra squad is thinking about setting up a surround as Reynor is going to try and come in from every single side. Blinding clouds connect, but so do the Cyclones onto the Vipers. Reynor has temporarily disabled a lot of those mechanical units, but quite a few of them do, well, they stay alive, right? I mean, they deal so much damage from a distance. Drones in the meantime have also gone down. Reynor is scrambling to get units over in this direction. Maru hits a really nice timing attack, and the +1 attacks really is helping out quite a bit right now. Those siege tanks are absolutely blasting. Maru manually locking on right there to those Vipers was huge, because the Vipers are no longer anywhere to be seen, and that means without a blinding cloud, Maru can actually clump the siege tanks up on purpose and get so much value out of this army. Yep, great movement right here by our Terran player, who is happily rallying more and more of those units straight across the map. Now, Tunneling Claws is once more getting used. The Roach Warren itself, though, is dangerously close by right now, too. There is, in the meantime, a command center as well in the bottom right-hand corner that has now landed, so this is by no means an all-in right here from Maru. And Maru is making it look easy in game number 1. Now, I've been getting some questions. What exactly is bugged about the Cyclone? So I got you the exact numbers, right? So the lock-on cooldown of the Cyclone is currently 2.86 seconds. The intended lock-on is 4.29 seconds. Now, obviously, it's only about a second or so, right? It doesn't really matter all that much until you think about the fact that during a game like the previous one, Terran quite literally gets a few hundred additional lock-ons off. And that was, all things considered, for a Terran mech game, a pretty short one. It's something that if Terrans would only make a Cyclone or two, sure, it wouldn't really matter all too much, but it adds up very, very quickly. Especially considering that the vast majority of the Cyclone damage comes out of that lock-on ability. Like the regular, it's kind of like, imagine if High Templar could cast storms significantly more frequently. Right? Like, they're water balloons, the little missiles, I guess, that the Cyclone shoot. They're nice and all, but the vast majority of the damage comes from the lock-on, and it just makes the unit, well, scale so much better throughout the game. And that's also the reason why Terrans don't really bother getting that secondary armory upgrade. If you go for the double armory, you don't really get a ton of value out of the attack upgrade, because the Cyclones get most of their damage done with the lock-on ability, and the Cyclone's lock-on ability is considered spell damage. Anyways, long story short, the lock-on is real good, and maybe a little bit too good, but at this point, even though it sounds to me, as somebody who knows very little about game design, it sounds to me like a literal 3-minute fix. Blizzard hasn't fixed it in over a half year now, and while they may get around to doing it at some point in the future, at this point, I'm assuming it is canon. It's just not gonna change, and we better get used to it. So it's going to be a double barrack start right here for Maru. So already a bit of a switch up. We did have 2 barracks in the previous game, of course, but he had to remake one of them, mostly because he, well, wanted to add on some additional factories. Command center behind it. Maru looking very strong, by the way, right? That previous game was extremely dominant. Reynor, he did have some nice engagements across the board, but those Vipers getting sniped out of the sky really, really hurt him. It just did not allow the reinforcing Roaches and Hydras there to get the proper engagement down, and Maru obviously was, he was locking onto those units immediately, but he was also anticipating them. That is the go-to defense for Zerg right now, and while the first wave of Zerg can be scary, the second wave is usually the one that overwhelms you as a Terran player, so if you can take the Vipers out of the equation, Sure, the opponent can remake a bunch of Vipers, but it is not easily done. Reynor has decided to open up with an entirely different build here this time around. This is an old school approach. We don't see this all too often anymore, but this is a Roach rush. Now, it's a Roach rush only in the absolute smallest sense of the word, because this is one Roach and one Ravager. Actually, I lied. It's two Roaches. One apparently... Oh, what are you doing to Brenda, bro? Okay, I'll give you guys some privacy. Anyways, the one Roach and the one Ravager go across the map. This sounds like the start of a bad joke, but it's mostly just to try and force an overreaction out of the Terran player. Maru, though, not really too concerned. He decided to go for a bunker on the high ground. He's obviously checking here with those Reapers as well to see if there's additional units going in. One of the drones, okay, gets targeted. One of them dies. Bile? You can anticipate where you need to bile. You might be able to get the perfect land. That is something that Zerg players dream of, but Reynor didn't even try. Okay, third CC again coming up on the back of this. Cyclone production has begun. And this is pretty wild, okay? I have mentioned this in previous videos, but usually the double barracks opener is considered to be a guaranteed, well, switch to bio in the mid game. Because you make 2 barracks, you produce 3 Reapers, you make a Marine or 2, or maybe 3 because your opponent goes for a quick Roach Warren, and then you just sort of delegate the barracks to add-on duty? Like, that's all they get to do for the remainder of the game? Reynor trying to play a little bit of a mind game there on his opponent by opening up with quick Roaches, pretending to go for a Roach rush. Maru opening up quick Reapers, pretending like he was gonna go for a Marine mid-game, but no. This is once more a mech follow-up with basically 150 or so minerals wasted, but at this point, Reynor may very well decide to... Oh, no, he's not. He may very well decide to go for a more conventional approach, right? So there is a chance for the Zerg here to think, oh, my opponent is not going Terran mech because he's already made 2 barracks, and this is a transition that always leads towards Stimpack and combat shields, so I can just chill and maybe go into the +1 melee here nice and quickly myself, and maybe get the Roach Warren a little bit later, or just go straight Baneling Nest. You might be able to skip those sort of units at this point in time, but Reynor, obviously, he's been playing this game a lot. He's well aware of this transition. And right now, he will see as well that indeed, there's already 2 Cyclones out on the map. A little bit odd. Mag Field Accelerator, that is the upgrade for the Cyclone lock-on, is going to finish up right now. And it means that the red LEDs are turned on, and the lock-on ability is going to get a little bit better. Now, Roach Speed is coming. Until Roach Speed is done, though, really the only thing Zerg can do is try to hug those units. On creep, at the very least, it is doable. Off creep, Maru should be able to control the battlefield for a little bit longer. Nice control right here, though, coming out of the South Korean Terran player. The Cyclones are the main damage dealers. The Hellions are mostly just cannon fodder. You add them in because you have additional minerals available, the main bottleneck being gas. So the Hellions can die. The Cyclones, okay, probably should be kept around, but so far, I mean, the damage here is really, really nice by Maru, being a little bit of a bully. Glio Reconstitution, that's Roach Speed, finishing up here very shortly. That's going to make everything a bit easier here for Reynor. It means that he can actually dance with his army a lot more effectively. He's trying to use the high ground advantage here, but not easily done with the constant scanning here from Maru, revealing where the units are located. Burrow, by the way, again done super quickly. Roach is thinking about going in for the counterattack, but they have been spotted immediately. Oh, Burrow, he was hoping that maybe the units would overchase and he was going to be able to, well, unburrow those units right underneath. Not the case, though. Maru a little bit too good, but, I mean, these constant burrows are really, really clever, right? I mean, a scan is the same amount of energy as a mule, and mules mine for hundreds of minerals. So every time you see a scan going down to reveal a couple of bruised roaches, it is effectively 1 mule down the drain, and it's not necessarily cost-effective to do so for only 2 of those bad boys. At least not in this stage of the game. Maru can go up to his beloved, you know, dozen command center build. When he makes a dozen orbital commands. sure, at that point you can scan for days and it's not really a problem, but at this phase in the game, every scan is still precious. Double armory again in the back of the main. +1 ground attacks is starting up. Siege tank production indeed has kicked in as well. Tunneling claws again coming in for the Zerg player. We already have an infestation pit as well. Reynor has started building up as many bases here as possible, and he's getting all of the tech that he can currently get. Maru, though, being super oppressive with these units, he is overstaying his welcome a little bit. Still gets a few roaches for his troubles. I really like the burrow. I still feel like it's something that we don't see nearly as frequently as we should. Burrow just to break the leash, I suppose, of those Cyclone lock-ons. Makes a lot of sense. Now, the real counter to those Cyclones, of course, for Zerg, is those Infestors, and, well, it is those Vipers. The Spellcasters can be incredibly good if you can get a fungal growth off and prevent the units from escaping. Obviously, it's super expensive, right, for the Terran to lose these units, because they're only slightly cheaper than a siege tank, so it's not like these are units you can just sort of throw away. Likewise, though, Vipers are very good as well, right, with the abductions. We did see an attempt of that in the previous game, but not quite enough for Reynor to really bring it home that time around. +1 melee even coming up. So not bothering with any of the armor upgrades here is Reynor. It means that Ultras are practically impossible to transition into, because Ultras really need their armor upgrades. But he's gonna be able to go for the full swarmy style, right? So you can go Roach Ravager, Ling Bane, Viper, Infestor. I mean, there's so much potential there. Additional factories, though, coming up. Additional command centers also are building right here for our Terran. He's, yeah, just adding on as many as he can. He's doing so before maxing out. Usually what Maru does is he maxes out first, and then he starts up the mass orbital command strategy. In this particular instance, he is playing, I think, around the picture of this map as well. So usually this map is very much so I'm gonna push through the center because our bases are pretty close, right? So this attack path right here for Maru is one that he can really abuse, and he's still gonna try and use it. But obviously with this many command centers already done, he has delayed his own strategy here for a little while. So probably not intending on winning the game with a push like this, but he's still making this look awfully scary. Neuroparasites coming up right now as well, though, for Reynor. He's currently sitting at 5 Infestors. The last few times I've seen Reynor play against Terran mech, he's very fond of adding in like 2, maybe 3 Vipers. But it's mostly Infestors. He builds up to like 10, 15 or so. Trying to get Neuroparasites, Fungal Growths, the whole shebang. All of it is good. Baneling Speed is going to be available very soon as well. Now Carapace is beginning, but this army, look at this. Maru is beginning the slow push towards the opponent's base. And this is extremely dangerous. There is one Neuroparasite, though, going down. The Infestor, though, also fell. Another Neuro here goes down, but it's all very expensive. And slowly but surely, he is starting to break through. Now, speaking of breaking through, in the meantime, on the other side, Reynor did run in a whole lot of Zerglings, and that may very well justify the losses on his side of the map. 28 SCVs go down in the blink of an eye, and this is before Adrenal Glance is even done. In the meantime, Blinding Clouds gets used on the siege tanks. We've already had a lot of units here from the Terran player die. Looks like this time around, at least minus that one Viper. The majority of the Spellcasters for Zerg are still around. I think 3 Infestors have died thus far. Reinforcing Zerg units are popping out of their cocoons as well, as Reynor is starting to now also break this position. So the 1-2 punch here was to counterattack, distract the opponent, and then commit to a fight at the front. Nicely done right there by Reynor. Still a lot of losses though, right? We've had 14-ish 100 minerals more lost for the Zerg. About an even amount of gas. And keep in mind that Maru does have that command center, well, backup, right? He's building up the Iron Bank. Orbital command numbers should be going up as well. And even though he did lose a lot of SCVs, I think it makes a lot of sense to just rebuild those. When you have this many orbitals, we're currently at 5, soon we're going to be at like 7 or so. When you get up to about 7, 8 orbitals, he's usually going up to 12. Yeah, you basically never run out of scans ever again. So the mules also obviously are extremely useful. He's gonna try again. Zerglings going in around the back. Fungal growth here at the front. Blinding Clouds? Yep. Onto the siege tanks, but Reynor still decides to pull back here for just a moment. It's a risky commitment, right? You get all the spells cast, but there's not actually enough army here for the Zerg to really, snipe any of those important units. Maru once more strikes back. I really like how quick Maru is out on the battlefield once again. Zerglings, though, are trying to see if maybe they can snatch a couple of those siege tanks. It is -2 hatcheries, sure, but he did kill pretty much all of the tanks, actually. There's only now one remaining, and that one is sieged up over at that 12 o'clock base. Hatcheries will have to be rebuilt. Keep in mind that the drone numbers, of course, are still mostly okay, but you're reinforcing roaches here as well on the right. I mean, I thought this was the retreat path for Maru, but he's taking a very weird route, and it is costing him quite dearly now. He's losing quite a few of these units that fell behind. In the meantime, though, new Cyclones are already rallying towards the left side of the map. Brenda is enjoying the looks right here behind that mineral line, apparently. Maru wants to hit both the bottom right as well as the top left, but the neural parasites now are gonna connect with all of those units. Not only is he getting the lock-on onto his opponent's army, but he's also obviously effectively using the neural parasite here as a, well, I guess like an abduction, right? I mean, it's basically the same as an abduction because the units do disappear pretty quickly afterwards, but in the meantime, they deal some damage for you. Nice snipes right here, though, by Maru. He gets another one of those hatcheries killed. This one also got the knight just before. This is a very fast game. Look at this. Reynor pushed to the absolute limit. 592 average actions per minute. This is his point of view right here. It's so silly, man. Watching top-level StarCraft, like, not only are you dealing with so much information and you're trying to execute so fast, but you also have to be thinking constantly about what the opponent could be doing at the same time. A little bit of first-person view right here from Maru. Very similar approach, of course. He wants to drive back after the lock-on. You can see all of the selection over here in the far bottom right corner of your screens, where you can see what is actually being selected and the hotkeys that are being used. Even though Reynor is closing in on 600 average actions per minute, Maru is by no means playing a slow game, and he might very well be playing faster APM-wise. Or I guess EPM-wise, effective APM, effective actions per minute. Because of the way that the Zerg production cycles work. A lot of the APM for Zerg will be them holding down a button, because they're reinforcing with Roaches and Zerglings here. Anyways, the Cyclones will continue locking on. Oh, we have all of the infestors extremely exposed. Careful now, Reynor. The scans will reveal where they are, but already the siege tanks have disappeared. If Maru would have scanned earlier and retargeted the tanks, that could have been a disaster. One of the infestors does get crushed underneath the cooling tower. Nice play right there for Maru. Still getting a little bit of value out of it. The Cyclone numbers, though, are getting absolutely out of control here. Ay, 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 ay. How many Cyclones do you think we're going to see throughout this game? Let me know down below in the comment section. How many Cyclones do you think there's going to be throughout this one game? We can check at the very end of it. Nice abductions over here, though. Abductions in the form of neural parasites. Roach is coming up. Siege tanks, yeah, also just getting sniped before they can really set up shop. And this is starting to be painful right now for Maru. Like, Maru has a very swarmy Terran army, but he's now getting a taste of his own medicine as Cyclones are fighting him. The neural parasites are honestly getting insane right here from Reynor. Orbital Command even takes a lot of damage. It's going to have to be repaired back up. Whew. What started off as an engagement to mostly force the Terran player off his lawn has really turned into a full-on fight on the other side of the map. Reynor once more wants to move in. His infestors are not really particularly healthy, but they still have energy for some neurals. I do like this, though. Knocking down the cooling tower on his side of the map, too. Just to make sure that he does still get a little bit of time to get some reinforcing troops out. But here's the problem, of course, for Maru. Yeah, you may have all the production. Yeah, you may have all those orbital commands. But you need to have mineral lines to mine from as well. And Reynor is doing a phenomenal job. Almost like soft containing the Terran. So he's allowed 5 bases from Maru. Quote-unquote allowed. But the 6th base seems to be where he's drawing the line. And those expansions are difficult to take. Like, this one's far away for the next base here. It's not really very connected. Obviously, if you commit a lot of army over here, then your, well, expansions on the right side look very, very vulnerable. Even though this is a fast-moving army, it's not quite as quick as that of the Zerg. And likewise, this one also is wide open. It's pretty easy for Zerg to engage into this location of the map. The main problem, though, is that all of the expansions here for Terran are now far apart, and there's no creep that connects the bases. It is not easy for Terran to dedicate a certain amount of army to both sides of the map. Because if you split up your troops, half of them go over here, the other half over here, you end up losing if Zerg just commits to one fight. And that's the real strength of the Swarm at this stage in the game. You need the whole army of Terran here to properly fight this. Now, it looks like, okay, the Infestor does get cut in half. That means that the Cyclone returns to Maru. Fungal Growths, though, could be big. Well, Fungal Growths are really big. Siege Tanks, though, in the back. Careful now, Reynor, because those Siege Tanks have started blasting. Then again, though, this is an awful lot of Zerg raiding Corrosive Biles, but the tanks in the back. I think Reynor did not see quite how many there were. The tanks in the back just absolutely obliterated the entirety of the Zerg army there. Beautiful game so far. Both players at an even amount of supply now. Reinforcing Zerglings, though, are showing up so much quicker than Maru anticipated. And while he did keep those siege tanks around, and they were the heroes of the previous battle, they are no match for the Zerglings. And even some reinforcing links show up. Reynor catching his opponent way off guard with a reinforcement of hundreds of links. In the meantime, the base in the top left, no planetary fortress. So Zerglings can very quickly swoop in there. SCV transfer, they try to go back to the safety of the planetary fortress, but 20 of them go down as well. Whew. That was an insane engagement, an insane sequence of events. Army size right there from Reynor dipped very quickly, but Maru's dipped even faster after the reinforcing troops of Reynor showed up. That's the real strength again, right? Zerg can very quickly, well, swap tech. You can go from a full Roach Ravager Infestor type of army to a full Zergling reinforcement, and when you look at that, the next move is going to be a Greater Spire. Maru wanted to eat the cake. And he got a little bit too far, right? Like, he wanted to have it. And then also kill another base. Got a little bit too greedy. Now, I love this. Maru has built 5 barracks in total. And he is going for a Ghost transition. So we're ending up with Ghost Mech. Obviously, the main culprit here for him, as we have more Zerglings going in, but this time around, he does lift up in time. The main culprit here for Maru, as he's once more being attacked as well on the right, are those Zerg spellcasters. EMP is phenomenal, but you do need the units out. So more lock-ons over here onto the Cyclones. This is really hurting now. Those Cyclones are even working away at one of their orbital commands. Reynor gets even more unit kills. But the EMP ability, of course, can shut down the Infestors. And if the EMPs do land on the Infestors, there's really not a whole lot of damage left in this Zerg army. It all comes down to the Ghosts. And I don't know if Reynor has really seen a whole lot of them just yet. He must have spotted a few when he ran up to this low ground here, or from the low ground up to the high ground, but he must have noticed that there were ghosts out, but it's so easy to still clump up those units. It all comes down to how Maru takes the engagements next. Maru needs to get some engagements down soon, though, because he's running out of cash. As awkward as it is, the man's got loads of orbitals, but he doesn't have a whole lot of resources. These are some really good roastings, though. In the meantime, the push over here on the right side does continue. Orbital command hits as well, and, well, Maru really needs to make sure that he connects one of the bases, right, to the rest of his expansions. Because getting both the bottom or the top left and then also this right side base, I mean, it's technically awesome, but realistically against a fast Zerg, it's just not very doable. So it looks like he has settled in to accepting his fate of having only one of those 2 bases taken. It means, though, that Reynor has been left by himself, and he may very well be thinking about that top left-hand base, well, in just a moment here, too, because At this point, the Terran seems to have left that side of the map entirely. Corruptor numbers, though, are coming up. Yeah. And Brute Lords, while expensive, are extremely good in this type of situation. Yes, Cyclones can lock onto them. Yes, the Ghosts can also snipe them out of the skies. But if you have enough Brute Lords, you can deal a lot of damage. Now, what is really good here for Maru is that even though the Hellbats are sort of mixed in just as like a mineral dump, the Hellbats, especially Blue Flame Hellbats, are very good at roasting those little Brutelings that the Brute Lords throw. So the dynamics here of the armies are still extremely complex. I think, though, if your Brute Lord numbers are big enough, you can actually win these type of fights. Either way, you do need a lot of them, though, because at this point, 5 Brutes, I think the Snipes can easily knock it down. Maru, though, thinking about giving up on his base, it looks like. Yeah, he's just evacuating it all together while he's setting up a counterattack towards the top left-hand corner. So the Brute Lords and the Infestors are preoccupied. These are pretty small... like, they're big targets, right, for the Terran player, but they're also pretty slow-moving units here for the Zerg across the board. So I quite like this here. Maru abusing the immobility, although he does lose a lot of units here too on the right side of the engagement. But he's abusing the immobility of the most expensive units of the Zerg whilst playing Terran mech, which is usually a very slow-moving army. And while he does lose one base of his own, it looks like he's gonna be able to kill 2 of the opponent and get a whole lot of drones as well. Now the Brute Lords, though, have shown up, and they have some reinforcements too. 7 of them in total. 9 Infestors are out. Maru needs to run. In the meantime, Zergling run by again. Thor production, though, has started kicking in, and that's going to make life easier, assuming they can actually join in with the rest of all of these units. In the meantime, Zerglings are working away. They're killing whatever SCV they can hit. He did take the base in the top left. Maru likewise also trying to take that same position. Burrow once more, gaining more value here for the Italian Zerg. Reynor has managed to get that Terran army off his lawn once again, but he paid a very pretty penny for it. 2 bases down the drain, and not a whole lot of mining anymore, since now the expansion in the far bottom right is running out. He does, however, now have one of the bases that Terran was mining previously. Maybe the mineral fields, they smell a little bit funny. SCVs and mules have touched them, but the drones don't really seem to mind. Maru retaking that base, though, where the Brute Lords were previously now, and he is dropping a whole load of mules on it. So income-wise, I think when this graph updates again, we're gonna see a good boost right there for Maru, because those mules are not messing around. This base, not that important anymore for Reynor. Maru's just getting rid of it for the time being. May as well, you're close by. You can do this whilst also keeping your expansion safe. And it's still 4 mineral fields, right, that are gonna be denied. Maybe 1,500 or so resources in total. Zergling run by attempted again by Reynor. He's been getting a lot of value with them, but as long as there's units ready to go, it shouldn't really be that big of an issue. Now the Brute Lords are here, though, and the Neural Parasites have also shown up. Thor is gonna get sniped mostly there by the Siege Tank. The Siege Tank actually getting the final hit as it was trying to kill some of the Brutelings. Reynor, though, wants to be super careful because lock-ons here, Thors, and then also those Ghosts. If the Terran is in a big concave, it'll be difficult for him to get the engagement, so he decides to back off. Terran army is looking absolutely menacing. I mean, what do you do to counter this army? It is effectively the perfect death ball. It's full Ghost mech. Well, maybe you could have a few less Hellbats. This is an army that is difficult to beat. Obviously, there's still 60 SCVs out. Normally, actually, at this stage in the game, I mean, we're nearly 30 minutes in now. Normally, Terrans will get rid of some of their workers and replace them with additional army supply instead, so I guess that's one of the arguments you can make. But this is a very, very scary Terran bull. Reynor wants to try and see if he can potentially get an engagement going, though, because this is also a phenomenal Zerg army. Fungal growth does land, but doesn't hit too much. Brute Lords, though, oh my god, there's the follow-up Fungal. Brute Lords are now within range as well of the Thors, and then also some of the Ghosts. The majority of them are getting sniped, The Vipers, for some reason, not really joining into this engagement. Reynor once more hoping that he can reinforce this with mass Zergling. Nice micro here, though, by the Terran player. He decides to send those Thors into the Medevacs and bring them back home. EMPs were landed. Blinding Clouds are now going down. Neural Parasite also happens on one of the Thors. Now the Blinding Clouds join in, and again, the reinforcing Zerglings swoop in. Reynor needs 2 armies to kill 1 army of the Terran, but he is playing the Zerg pieces extremely nicely. Look at the gas losses. That is not something we normally see. Zerg losing significantly less than the Terran. And those Zerglings, those same Zerglings we just saw cleaning up the Terran army, they move in as well to this base on the right, and they'll be able to absolutely destroy the mineral line in just a matter of seconds. 38 SCVs have gone down. In a way, he's almost doing Maru a bit of a favor, because Maru doesn't want to have that many workers anymore, but he needs to, well, get some additional cash going now. The piggy bank was already smashed, and he's only sitting now at 112 supply. Reynor trying to wait. He's hoping that his infestors can get some additional energy once more. Here's the Terran reinforcement showing up. Maru hoping that maybe he can strike back. It's a difficult call to make right now for Terran, but he needs to do something. He's hoping for a good EMP on the ramp. Ghost thinking about going around the site. Okay, we do see some abductions. He's keeping the infestors, though. Reynor, that is far in the back. He abducts the Ghost, but brings the Ghost accidentally close for the perfect EMP as well on every single one of those infestors. A lot of units for both players, though, still remain. Those Ravagers raining their biles from the skies. The Cyclone still locking on. The Thor, actually, not to be underestimated either. It's actually a very big damage dealer. In the meantime, though, the Vipers once more got some additional energy, and that means more yoinks will be used, but there's not a whole lot of army remaining here for the Zerg. Reynor forced to now spend his piggy bank as well. He doesn't have a lot of mining anymore. One accidental Muta gets queued up. Roach's Ravagers are fighting Hellbats and Cyclones. The Thor probably should be retargeted here manually. A couple of the low HP Zerglings come in around the site. Medevac picks up whatever it can, but decides to unload once more to use the Thor as a meat shield to save as much HP on those Cyclones as possible. Even the Queens are pulled all the way from the other side of the map. And Reynor, with some of the absolute last units in the game, manages to even up the score. Okay, so the grand total of Cyclones was 82. 82 Cyclones, but 45 Siege Tanks. 24 Infestors, 4 Vipers only, 860 Lings, 142 Roaches. It's a lot of damage. Next up, we find ourselves on Maganatha. That was one of the very best games of StarCraft 2 that we have had in 2025 so far. A constant back and forth. I was convinced that Reynor was losing about 4 times. He managed to clutch it right there in the, well, very end, right? I mean, I think Maru got a little bit tunnel visioned in multiple situations. He overextended twice after winning a very large engagement with the siege tanks. I think he must have lost, I don't know, like 20 plus... Probably like 20 plus siege tanks in total to Zerglings that one game, which is pretty ridiculous. Just a little bit too much. All right, let's see. What can we do right here on Maganatha? This is a huge map. Considered to be the biggest map in the map pool, but also not usually the one that has the longest games on it. So, interestingly enough, I was thinking about this, right? We have this base right over here, and then a mirrored one as well on the other side of the map. How many times have we seen these bases getting mined? I don't even remember. Maybe once? Maybe twice? So in case you're unfamiliar, you can knock down the cooling towers, which will then drop down a bunch of debris onto the Xel'Naga Watchtower. Then you can destroy the debris on the Xel'Naga Watchtower, and then you can take a base right over here. It's a really cool concept. I just don't think it's necessary, especially not for a base that is as exposed as this one is. Like, I think the risk in this base, the risk in this, you know, expansion, is the fact that well, it's already in the middle of the map and your opponent can reach it in about 2 seconds time. So if you then also have to jump to like 7 hoops to actually be able to mine it, and it's only, you know, 6 golden mineral fields, I really don't think it's... Yeah, I really don't think it's necessary. But it's a cool concept. Maybe if this was like the 3rd or something, you know, like people would actually try to play around it, it would potentially be used a little bit more frequently. And likewise, the base is also in the far top right, as well as the far bottom left. We do see them coming into play every once in a while, but certainly not more than like 1 in 5 games on the map. It's huge. The map is okay as far as the layout goes, but it's not my personal favorite. Anyways, did I already tell you that Maru is a fan of Terran mech? Double factory coming up 2.5 minutes into the game. We did go for a single marine, so yo, look at that. Jimmy is out. But this has been a scoutless opener here for Maru. No Reaper, no SCV. Jimmy has been tasked with destroying the entirety of the swarm. But very soon though, he'll be delegated just to, I guess, Overlord sniping. Yeah. He just gets to patrol the main base. You'll love to see it. Okay. What exactly has Reynor gone for so far? Well, we've got a super quick lair, no 3rd, and Overlord speed. Okay. Overlord speed is one of those upgrades, right, that can be extremely good, especially when you can catch your opponent off guard with OV drops. So that's the idea behind this. Overlord is going to go around the side here and is already waiting to pick up a bunch of those lings. The thing about Cyclones, though, is that they're still very good as well at base defense. Additional Zerglings move in around the side. Maru doesn't yet know about the lack of a 3rd, although he's seen some movement here outside of his base. He sees some random Zerglings running around too. Maru hasn't checked, though, whether or not the 3rd has been built over there, or I guess he's just seen that it's not at the very least at the front, but this is one of the strengths for Zerg on the map. There are so many 3rd base locations, and Maru, opening up Scoutless, does not see what's going on, although he does notice that there is a speed Overlord heading on over towards the right side of the map. Jimmy has found a friend. They're going to be on the perimeter of the main, but they will need reinforcements here in just a moment, because the Overlord drops are arriving. Not even 440 or so in the game. It's very early. Zerglings in the meantime at the front as well. The wall-off is not yet fully completed. At the very least, not with completed structures. Ling drops though, but the micro here is excellent from Maru. Queens are also thinking about showing up. They will indeed arrive now. Lings do break open the natural. You cannot repair structures that are still being built. So that's the big problem right there for our Terran. If you would have gone for a Reaper Scout, this would have been so much easier to deal with. But considering this was completely unseen until it already hit, well, very close to his main base, it's still not looking that bad right here for Maru at all. Sure, a bunch of supply depots are going off, and yeah, sure, we will see some of the SCVs die. But at this point, the worker count is still identical for the Zerg player, and there's still no 3rd hatchery to be seen anywhere. New queens are being produced in the meantime on the other side of the map. The creep is going to be a little bit annoying, but I think this is something he can deal with just a single scan, although he needs to wait here until this orbital command has energy. A scan over here would be good, so we can land the other one too. The queen's going around the side, though. Trying their very best. Little drop inside of the main base is nice and all, but now the Cyclone is going to be able to complete the lock-on to that Overlord, and that means that the queens have to say goodbye. Creep tumors have been cleaned up in the natural expansion. All of these Zerglings were still coming in for a counterattack. Baneling Nest right now on the back of this. Reynor not quite achieving what he set out to go for in this particular game with the Overlord drops. He did successfully catch Maru off guard, but even caught off guard, Maru's crisis management right there was pretty much perfect. Playing a pretty uncommon unit composition compared to what he normally goes for. This almost feels like bait. Allowing these Lings into the main base was certainly not intentional, but Blue Flame Hellions are real good. He decides to drive the units back home. Can he corner the Zerglings? 6 SCVs go down. Now, the one saving grace here for Reynor is that Terran also doesn't have a 3rd base. But he doesn't have a Roach Warren. He doesn't really have much of anything, and he's got a whole lot of links. As a matter of fact, Reynor still has not gone back to drone production. Effectively, he is going for a multi-layered all-in here. So after the Queen drops and the Zergling drops, we're now going for what looks like a Ling Bane run-by. Not even any Banelings in this Ling Bane push, though. Why did we make a Baneling nest? He also did decide to go for the +1 melee. Third hatchery, by the way, did end up getting the Knight there by Terran, who is now thinking about driving into the base. At the very least, there's a Spinecrawler in location. Reynor hoping that maybe he can get a full surround on his army, which can still justify all of the losses that he has had so far. At this phase in the game, though, Zerg is supposed to have a bigger economy than the Terran, and Maru is leading in that department at this point in time, making the better units, having more tech available. This is not something that Reynor can very easily macro his way out of. He doesn't have eco, he doesn't have army, he doesn't have tech, he doesn't even have creep spread. So even though supply-wise this is not looking like the end of the world, nothing here has really gone in his favor. And when you're playing full Zergling against Blue Flame Hellions, against an opponent that is happily pumping out more of those bad boys, what in the world do you do? Great movement here by Maru, though. Yep. Once more, engaging off creep. He knows that really the creep is going to make some of these engagements manageable for Zerg. So as long as he stays around the perimeter and he snipes the hatcheries just like that, he should be A-okay, as he now also cleans up a huge number of Zerglings on the watchtower. A lot of G's get cold as Maru gets another point on the board. Next up, we find ourselves on Tokamak. Brilliant game. Again. Albeit a bit of a cheeky one, right? I think Reynor effectively had all of the tools at his disposal to get the job done. It was a scoutless opener from Maru. Maru didn't see it come in until pretty much the absolute last possible moment. And then it still didn't work. It's a very entertaining game. I don't think it's a particularly strong build order, though, from Zerg across the board. Now we're just one map away from a Maru victory. And Maru seems to be, well, once more, the complete Terran package, right? I mean, he's been playing Terran mech every single game thus far, but he's been doing it in a different way every time too. And that's what makes it very difficult to predict, right? So Maru has probably like 6 or 7 different mech openers that he's comfortable with. And he probably has about a dozen or so bio openers that he's confident with. And all of them lead to different timing attacks. So, I mean, obviously I'm just sort of pulling those numbers out of thin air, but there's no denying that Maru has a wide variety in his builds, and he's got to be one of the difficult opponents, one of the most difficult opponents to go up against. I do feel like, though, if that previous game... Like, if that previous build from Zerg didn't work in that previous game, it just isn't that great of a strategy. And this is something that sometimes happens in tournaments. When you are playing a very important series, which this one is, when you're playing a very important series, you're doing so in front of a crowd. Sometimes you go for build orders that you didn't really practice. It's actually one of the most common things. I've done quite a lot of StarCraft 2 coaching over the years, and many of the people that I've coached, they tried playing in tournaments themselves. And one of the most common bits that I have heard after a tournament is that players play strategies during events that they never practiced before. Because you're playing on a stage, or maybe you're playing in a tournament and you're doing a series, right? You suddenly feel like you have to do something that's a little bit weird, a little bit wild, a little bit out of the ordinary. And oftentimes that means you're playing a strategy you didn't even really practice. It sounds really stupid, but it's sort of how the human brain works. Obviously, Reynor is a very experienced player, so I would imagine that's not what happened to him. But it is something that is worth noting. When push comes to shove and competition actually happens, when you have to compete in a thing you've been preparing for a while, sometimes you just feel the urge to do something entirely different than what you practiced. Triple Command Center opener again for Maru. Most Terran mech openers, by the way, in the current meta, don't start off the way that Maru has been playing so far in these games. Most of them start off with a triple CC 111. Not with this. Maru is going, well, into a starport eventually, but he starts off with usually 3 factories. It's a curious thing to see. Reaper, though, in the meantime, still dancing on the other side of the map. Obviously, Maru has an opportunity here to go for something a little bit more cheeky. If he wants to, that is. If you have 2 shots, 2 opportunities, right, to obtain the victory here, to seize everything you ever wanted, you may as well do a cheese every once in a while. I've learned that from Eminem. Yeah, he's big into cheesing with Terran. Anyways, Roach Warren right now coming up. Cyclone production, though, has kicked in once again. Now, this is a map where it can be quite difficult for Terran to really get a proper engagement off, especially early on. Zergs have gotten very comfortable macroing on 4 bases here. There's really only, when you look at it, right, there's really only like 2 entrances into your bases here. So there's the one right over here into the 3rd, and then the one right over here into the 4th. And while they are far apart, if you are spreading some creep around, your overlords are in clever positions, it is something that's very defendable, assuming Zerg actually is paying very close attention, because if the queens are in the wrong spot, it can still turn into an absolute disaster. But we usually see Zergs be quite successful on this map, using the rocks right there to force the splash damage onto the creep tumor. Nicely done. Cyclone lock-on, though, once more kicking in. Lair, by the way, already about 80% or so of the way done. 4th hatchery is going to be coming up at the bottom. 3rd command center now landed on the other side of the map, and there's the Cyclone lock-on ability again. So all the roads do lead to very similar unit compositions right here for Maru, but the ways in which he's getting there are very different. Now we don't really have as much of a Hellion focus. Obviously there's still a lot of Hellions out, but not as many as we've had in the previous games. Now we did not go for the Blue Flame upgrade first, but we're going for the Cyclone upgrade first. And, well, he does force the Council right there onto one of the hatches. Okay. Burrow again. I love Burrow, man. I think Burrow is still such a cool ability. It's interesting to me how it's taken like 15 years for Burrow. 15 years and a unit that has been broken now for months for Burrow to become a normal thing in a game of StarCraft. But I kind of love it. Burrow has always been this like niche thing. It's so powerful though. It has so much. I feel like it's something that we're going to be seeing for years to come. Like it's just such a powerful ability. It seems like a no-brainer to me. Okay. Couple of creep tumors again, replacing the ones that were lost. Maru's doing a good job though, maneuvering around here. Roach speed is soon going to be done, and that will make it a lot more difficult to keep trying to play hatchery whack-a-mole over here, where he keeps on dancing around. Okay. Using the scan over here to get the creep tumor and maybe an overlord or 2? Okay. Yeah. That was a cute little move. He's been scanning quite liberally though, and there's another one coming up. It does mean, right, with this many scans, that Maru's economy is just not quite as good as it could have been. It'd be nice, actually, if we had a scan counter on the screen somewhere. That would be an interesting statistic to have. Maru, though, now also making the full transition to Terran mech. So we're adding on the double armory. We're adding on the additional factories here. He's begun siege tank production. We're going into a 4th base, engineering base, so he can go and make a planetary fortress. All of this is awesome. But you have to be careful about the Zerg sledgehammer. Sometimes you get very carried away just trying to play SimCity, and then you realize that the opponent can still attack. It's going to be burrowed Roaches this time around here from Reynor, who's also adding on Zergling speed right now as a Baneling Nest too, so Infestation Pit is likely going to be allowed to, go into a hive. There's the burrow again. Man, if these units drive over the Roaches, it's an absolute disaster. As long as Reynor sees it in time, he can just unburrow and kill probably about 90% of his army. Units on the high ground here too. Reynor has, by the way, not really added on a lot of drones anymore. Now he's adding on a few once again, but for the most part, he's already finished making workers. He's going up to 90 plus. Missile turret, by the way, is important here too as a detector. Another reason to be building up the engineering bay. Oh. Ah! You can see the red selection circle right there for Reynor. Hoping that the army would drive over it, and when it finally does, Of course, that's exactly the moment that you look at something else. All right. Ghost Academy coming up already, by the way, here for Maru. Additional barracks already coming up. Maru is cutting so many corners in this game so far. He's being very greedy. And I quite like this, right? Normally, I would consider this to be too greedy. But Maru's like, yo, I'm leading the series 2-1. I have a little bit of a chance to potentially make myself look insanely overpowered. This is him taking risks right now. Crossing his fingers and hoping that it's going to be paying off in the future. Viper production has already been started up here too. +2 missiles. We have the +1 melee as well. Double expansions here for Reynor. Okay. We're building up all of the things very quickly this time around. Both players are actually basically saying, yo, let's just skip the early game a little bit. I mean, we'll still dance, but we won't dance too much. Let's also skip the mid game for the most part. I mean, we'll still dance, but not too much. Let's go straight to the late game. This is the StarCraft 2 equivalent of like a 10-minute no rush, even though there's been quite a bit of fighting. At least at the highest level. This is the most, common example of that sort of thing, you know, where both players are technically not rushing. They're not really attacking. They're mostly just, like, throwing fake punches at one another. It means, though, that when the gloves do come off, the damage is going to be ridiculous. Look at Maru, already rallying a bunch of Hellions into the base just for fun. I mean, losing 5 drones here. Reynor doesn't care. Spine crawlers have already been set up in position as well. I don't know who benefits this more, though, right? So, obviously, Reynor... Okay, finally he did unburrow those roaches in the middle of the map. But obviously, Reynor is going to have a lot more mobility around the map. Much like what we saw on Ultra Love earlier. He's already taking so many expansions. And this is the real problem here for Terran. Like, yeah, you can be super greedy. But if your opponent is a formidable macro player too, it's very difficult to actually win the game in the long run. Because now Maru has gotten away with all the greed, but Reynor has met him in kind, and now Reynor can start flooding the map. Blinding clouds are so possible. Okay, overextension with one of them. We already do have ghosts out too. But if Reynor can mine both the bottom right as well as the top left fully out, it's game over for Terran. Like, you can't really ever compete with that against a good Zerg. Because not only does it mean that your opponent has an extra base, it also means that you have one less. So the relative amount of resource mining from the opponent is just through the roof. Reynor probably knows, though, that he's not going to be able to have both of them. But technically, if you can get away with it, it is just such a powerful play. And this is not, like, what Maru is going for here is not really leading to a timing attack. It's not really leading to, like, okay, this is when I move out. No, this is him playing the long, drawn-out game. So he will be having some engagements here at some point, but it's so difficult to actually grab a foothold and just continuously expand. Here we go again. Zerg moves in as well on the left as he is moving on the right, using that mobility of the swarm to his advantage. That's a planetary fortress that fell in just a couple of seconds. I like this strategy from Terran a lot, especially against weaker Zergs. Like, if you do this against me, I will die 100% of the time. But against the absolute top dogs, and Reynor is certainly amongst them, it is just so difficult to really, like, achieve something. Because what if you, like, okay, so you have all the economy in the world, you're building up your perfect army, but you're still not really setting yourself up for success. Which is kind of unlucky, you know? Like, it's kind of one of those things where you wonder sometimes what you've even really done wrong here. But Reynor is absolutely running away with this game so far. Way more comfortable with it, and you can already see it reflected in the amount of resources mined. Maru's not even maxed. Reynor is already sitting at 8,500 minerals and gas in the bank. Ooh, somehow missed the abductions there on the siege tank. I'm not exactly sure what happened there. Ooh, nice defense as well, though, with the medevac. And obviously, this is by no means game over here for Maru. Like I said, Maru still has all the economy he could need. He can still build all of the army that he wants, but I'm a little bit afraid that the way that this is set up for him right now is just not really leading to success. Ultimately, his goal should be to mine 50% of the map. If Maru can mine half of the map, that's going to be very manageable. But similar situation as on Ultra Love. The first 4 bases are easy. The 5th base, doable. The 6th base, okay. But you need 8. And this is another one over here, and then also the top left. Like, you need 8 in order to mine 50% of the map in total. And here comes Reynor once more. He's just breaking through. As soon as he notices the Terran's army is somewhat out of position, the swarm is once more rolling in. Now, obviously, these fights are expensive, right? That's also one of the reasons why Reynor needs more than 50%, and that's why he is taking these bases so aggressively. So far, honestly, the trades have been pretty darn good for Zerg. But usually, the longer that the matches go on, Zerg will lose more resources. So in order to actually live that lifestyle, he does need to have the income levels that are appropriate too. Okay, Maru finally able to think clearly again. He decides to scan the top left and realize, dang, this base is already up. He cannot allow this base to be up for long. Here comes the swarm once again. Yeah, now with all the army though nearby, it's very doable. Honestly, Reynor could even be thinking about taking this expansion right over here. Not even a terrible idea. I think in a straight-up fight, the Terran army is better. But that's exactly what Reynor is doing so cleverly. He's not really allowing the Terran a straight-up fight, although maybe this could be the one. Overextension by Reynor is very possible. Blinding Clouds do go down. EMP also does land. This is mostly just Ling Bane. A couple Roaches in the back as well. They are slipping into the mineral lines now, though. SCVs are falling, and that may just justify all of this. I think Maru should immediately launch a counter-offensive right now if he has the units available for it. If he can snipe the base in the top left, that would be big. Yeah, he needs to go, because the longer that this base is mining, so it takes like maybe 12 minutes or so for a full base to run out. The longer that this is going on, he knows at this point that the Zerg must have the far bottom right too, even though he hasn't seen it. Tactical nuke, by the way. He can't really allow these bases for too long. Careful, though. Drones have decided to run away. I think Reynor has effectively accepted that he was never going to mine out that base anyway. Just wanted to get whatever money he could. Now backs up, and again, uses the opportunity to counterattack, but Maru anticipating it. Plenty of troops sitting in a natural expansion, reinforcing as well. Are those ghosts in that spot? And, well, you know what? He thought maybe if you're not killing the base fast enough, I'll just go back to mining it some more. Thank you very much. Only a single siege tank and a ghost, and then a liberator with task with defending all of it. Ranged upgrade coming up, though, for the Libs now. And that's yeah, it's going to be a nice power upgrade for them. Maru, by the way, soon arriving at +3/+3 as well for the bio units, which is kind of nuts. Yeah. Roach Ravager Zergling fighting off against Medevac Siege Tank Thor. It's an odd unit composition, but it will serve Reynor just fine. One Hellbat. One Hellbat trying its very best and actually getting a formidable amount of units down. Building armor, though, is coming up as well for Maru, which is an absolute no-brainer at this point. Looks like eventually the hatchery in the top left has disappeared. I would imagine about maybe half of the resources, maybe a little bit less, maybe like 35–40% or so of the resources there have been mined out by Reynor. He also actually had that base for a little bit, but then wasn't mining from it, which is a little bit unfortunate. But still, he has taken his 50% of the mine, or his 50% of the map, and then he's mined some on top of it, and he's gonna try and do exactly that once again. These games can actually go so fast, man, because at this rate, the entire map is gonna be mined out at like 30 minutes, which is kind of crazy. Zerg counterattack again. Siege tanks were mostly by themselves, but there were still some Hellbats waiting on the high ground. SCVs are fighting against Lings on hold position. Ravager still hitting whatever it can from the back of this mineral line. Now Terran, though, is trying to strike back. First time, honestly, that Maru goes on the offensive with a significant chunk of his army. Orbital Command itself gets biled down. Reynor is Gonna lose a few bases of his own, it looks like, but he's dealing a ton of damage too on the other side of the map. And of course, he is the one with a very significant bank. Maru is maxed out, finally, but he doesn't really have the army to win the game, I don't think. He would have to push so deep onto creep. So Reynor is making all the correct decisions here. Yeah, I'm loving this game for him. Strategically, all of this makes so much sense. So both players lose a whole lot of economy, but considering Reynor had the bigger bank, that will obviously benefit him in the long run. How many drones have died this game? 23 versus 98 SCVs. Not ideal. Now, Maru did get this base up and running. Likewise, Reynor trying to get this base going once again, but Maru is arriving right at the same time. Blue Flame Helmet drops do continue. A couple of Zerkins get roasted. Quite a few Zerkins, actually, get roasted. And then they're going to go after the drones as well. I mean, clumped up workers? Okay. That was way more successful than that was ever anticipated to be. I don't think Maru saw it. I don't think Reynor saw it, but we did. Base in the top left, by the way. Killed. Planetary Fortress here on the right. Yeah. I mean, those biles were very ambitiously positioned. But the planetary is gone, and Maru has now been reduced to only 41 SCVs. Reynor doesn't have a ton of workers either. Interestingly enough, he's got an insane amount of gas. Normally, that's the main bottleneck for Zerg. He's already got a Greater Spire, though, so I wouldn't mind seeing him make a transition towards, like, Broodlord Infestor from here on out. A very gas-heavy army, but again, Maru is marching. And now, he does have the supply advantage. There is an Infestor following this army around. Drones decide to evacuate this location. Reynor again going in for the counter-offensive here. Reynor has way too much gas in the bank. He needs to get Broodlords out. That needs to get him out fast. If he doesn't get him out soon here, he's in a world of trouble. Now, there's so much creep. Maru decides to back up. I think he had a really good opportunity here, actually, to push. But he didn't want to lose another expansion and then be too deep onto creep. You never know if there's going to be, like, I don't know, a dozen Broodlords waiting. Maybe a whole lot of Infestors burrowed. You need to slow push your way onto creep. And I think Reynor escaped right there, but only just barely. I would have really liked to see the Spire upgrades start up earlier, by the way. We don't have any of them just yet. 10 Broodlords are coming out right now, but they're going to be launching their children at a fully armored up Terran player. These units do not die easily. Still, it's an awful lot of Zerg. Reynor now has gone back to spending some of his money. Broodlord Infestor is indeed going to be his weapon of choice. Terran army, though, continues fighting deeper and deeper onto the creep. He hasn't seen the Broodlord transition just yet, but he's gonna find out right about right now. Okay, Fungal Growth does land. Terran army needs to go home. 15 SCVs in the meantime have died again. Biles should be able to connect right there with that lib. Yep. And that's more denying of that base. In the meantime, though, speaking of bases, Maru did kill the expansion in the far bottom right. But Maru is starting to fizzle out here, right? Like, he just... Even though it's one of those weird things, as a Terran player, you don't even really know what you've done wrong. Because you've got the perfect army, you've got all the economy in the world, you were super greedy early on, you got all of your upgrades long before the opponent, and still, it just doesn't seem to work against the very best Zerg players on the planet, because they just swarm all over you. The thing about Zerg is that they can always outgreed you. Even when you think you can be really greedy, Zerg can effectively cut all unit production and just build economy and upgrades. You don't really have that luxury as Terran, because, well, just of the way that the larva mechanic works. It's really hard to try and outgreed a Zerg. It only works if they are also willing to play that game. Yeah, brilliant match here by Reynor. Now he finally starts up the +1 air. That, of course, should have started up a long time ago. Maru has 4 orbitals still remaining. No command centers, though, to replace the one that he just lost with. Zerg counterattack once more coming in, but it's Roaches and Zerglings, and then some Ravagers, too. Meaning that the entire defensive army here for Zerg, yeah, is going to be spellcasters and then brute lords. Now, you will be able to deny this base over here. Hellbet's trying their very best to deal with the roaches, but roaches, of course, are properly armored. I say that. He doesn't even have the +3 armor here yet for the carapace for the ground units, but these units are still much better, of course, in a straight-up fight. Reynor giving up on the expansions here is very clever. I don't think he needs it. He's effectively forcing Maru into an all-in. So all he needs to do is clean up the army. Now, Maru decides that he doesn't want to take that fight. I can't blame him. How in the world is he going to take an engagement against this type of army on creep with spore crawlers and everything too? It's not going to happen. But then likewise, I don't think he has much of a base to come home to. There's 16 SCVs remaining. There's like no mining happening in total at all. This graph has effectively looked like this for the last 20 minutes. There are some peaks and valleys, mostly whenever mules are mining and whenever they aren't. But this has been an uphill battle for a while. Now, maybe Maru can clutch it, right? Like, I mean, this army is still to be respected. Ghost EMPs are super important. If he can deny the spellcasters, that could be big. Reynor decides to move in before Maru really gets the chance to do so. Normally, it's Terran initiating this fight. The fungal growth, though, are brilliant. And now the Brute Lords are just once more raining everything from the skies. Maru never stood a chance in this game. About the best case scenario for Zerg from the absolute start to the absolute finish. And that means it all comes down to this. Final game in this best of 5 series takes place on ley lines. I think it is time for Maru to play a different strategy altogether. That previous game, it was good, but it wasn't good enough. And I really don't think that that strategy in general is a winning one against top-level Zergs. So what do you do? What do you do right now as Reynor? Are you gonna make the assumption that Maru will play the same strategy again? There's no way. I think Maru should be a lot more active in this particular match. Likewise, though, do you then try to play around that? Do you go for some sort of all-in? Do you try to shut this sort of thing down before it lays eggs? Well, we're starting off once more with a double barracks build. Normally, this leads to Terran bio, but as we've already seen on Ultra Love, apparently for Maru, not necessarily the case. He may always use one of those barracks for scouting, or maybe just keep them around and use them for ghost production later on in the game. But this can, of course, be Terran bio. Normally, this would be a Terran bio start, of course, here. Terran bio start right here for our player in blue, but we'll have to see exactly where he goes from here. Hatch gas pool, though, for now here for Reynor, not really cutting any corners. A lot of Zergs are very fond of delaying the gas geyser for a long time, taking the third hatchery instead. But you're playing against Maru, and Maru is the kind of guy who will happily do a coin flip for $100,000 in a tournament finals. You know what I mean? Like, this isn't the tournament finals, but he has done it before where he is, like, losing a series significantly, and then he does, like, 3 proxy barracks back to back to back. You're just wondering why in the world anyone would ever do that. But Maru is not afraid to go ahead and mix it up and change the script entirely, so he's a dangerous man to go up against. There was this one, I think it was a WESG finals, where he was just cheesing every single game. When was this? Like 2017, maybe? Anyways, he was just cheesing. The Reaper production, though, has begun now. We don't really see Maru cheese as much anymore, I feel like. Yeah, maybe it's because the opposition has gotten too good. Cheesing is still certainly a thing in SC2, but when everybody's really good at the game and they can hold most of the cheeses, it does become very tricky. Oh, okay. Accidentally finished up the gas geyser there. Maybe it was on purpose. The drone probably would have died anyways. Zergling counterattack was attempted, but there's already a wall off here. Maru gone for a single factory. Not really too much yet. It's always so fun, though, whenever you have, like, the back-to-back-to-back-to-back cheesing. Because as the opponent, you're like, there's no way, right? There's no way this guy is gonna cheese me again, right? Okay, he's now done it 3 times, back-to-back. There's no way he's gonna do it a 4th time, right? And then, well, as soon as you do call the bluff, that's, of course, the game. When they stop doing it. All right, let's see. Reapers are being awfully annoying, though. After denying the base on the right already, they're now also canceling the base over here on the left, plus a kill on the drone. Reynor remakes a 3rd base again, but it's all been extremely slow progress. He has not, in the meantime, added his drones back to gas early or whatever. I mean, this is early now, but at least relative to what we normally see with the Zergling speed finishing up. That's usually when you put him back in. This is slightly quicker, but he didn't immediately do it when he lost the first one. He did not go for a quick lair. He did not plant down a Roach Warren. There is no Baneling Nest or anything along those lines. He has basically spent his additional cash on getting additional queens out. Now, this is a switch up right now from our Terran. For the first time in this series, Maru is playing Bio. +1/+1 coming up. Stimpeg, researching. We will probably have the combat shields in a moment too. Even though this has been the gold standard for 15 years, Maru has not been playing it much as of late, which is kind of ironic, because Maru is also like the most successful tournament player, at least when it comes to playing with the Terran pieces that we've ever had. And he always plays Bio. So even though he is not really enjoying it too much right now, or maybe he's enjoying the Cyclone builds a little bit more, he's still perfectly capable of playing this style. But it does make you wonder, right? Like, would he be slightly rusty? If all you've been practicing leading up to a tournament like this is mech, I'm sure that is not the only thing he's played. But if it is 90% of the games you've practiced, because you sort of assume that Terran Bio will be easy for you anyways, because you've done it so many times, I mean, you do sometimes have to wonder whether or not this becomes more difficult than it needs to be. Lair coming up right now for Reynor, who's going into the +1 carapace. Reynor, of course, has had a lot of practice against Bio. Even though mech is super popular, Bio is equally popular. Maybe even slightly more popular at the highest level. So he will have a lot of practice against this. And a lot of Zergs actually enjoy going into a quick Ultra Rush against this sort of style. So against both Terran Mech as well as Terran Bio, can you go for this build right here that Reynor has gone for? Now, this has not been a Roach Warren, but the +1 armor is extremely nice to have. If you can only afford 1 upgrade against Terran, you should always go Carapace, because it at the very least makes Ultras a possibility. Still though, this is a scary attack. Armory is already done, so that means Maru can morph the Hellions into Hellbats. There's a load of queens available, 9 of them already. Zerglings are going to pick up some of the reinforcing troops, and that's good, but it all comes down to the dance with the queens. Is there enough for Reynor to get the job done? Ground Carapace, that's what he's waiting for right now. He's got some Banelings coming up too. Hatchery itself is running dangerously low. He decides to commit because he doesn't want the Hatchery to fall. Hatchery is going to go down. Banelings do show up eventually. There's not enough room in the plane for everybody. So Maru's units, at least some of them, except for Jimmy, do end up going down. But he got what he came for. The Hatchery, well, there's a new one coming up, but that's another one that bites the dust. And so far, it's been a very successful early game. Reynor now triple expanding, by the way. He's already had one over here too, but he is now making a whole lot of bases all at the same time. This one just wrapped up. It's a bit of a weird spot, though, for Maru now. Because, yes, you've done damage on the other side of the map, but also, none of the drones really died. You haven't really gotten rid of the creep spread. This is kind of like the mythological Hydra. You've killed one base, but immediately new ones appear. And you don't really slow down the Zerg very much with this. Now, the losses, of course, on Maru's end were also relatively low. Additional barracks are following this up. Maru is going for an 8 Rex all-in. There is no 4th command center. You always have to choose. Do I want to build up 3 additional Rexes? Or do I go for a command center? You can still go for a command center now too, But Maru is not really the type of guy, usually at least, that plays these middle-of-the-road strategies. Where you kind of play mech, or sorry, you kind of play an all-in, but you also kind of play macro. Usually, he goes for the full. Either like the full macro or the full all-in. 2-2 is already finishing. Oh, he had a supply block. That's painful. That's probably the worst timing to be hitting a supply block, honestly. He's making so many depots all at the same time. I don't think he was slowed down too much. But any slowdown right now is big. Reynor hoping that the units would be coming through this corridor instead. Maru taking a long way around. Bailing speed, though, is available. He's thinking about engaging off creep. Doesn't want to do it in the end. Siege tank siege up pretty far away. One Hellbat is going to pay the price because of it. 3-3 starts up right now for Maru as well. All Reynor needs to do is shut this down without losing too much. He decides to be very conservative and give up on the base as well. Picking up reinforcements in the middle of the map once again. Hatcheries, though, are now done, of course, so those drones will be able to continue mining. Plenty of creep available. 4th command center starts up, but super late. It's a little bit awkward now, right? Because what exactly do you do here as the Terran? He sees the burrowed banelings. That's big. If you step onto those, you are basically dead. Important not to do so. This choke point here is so scary, though. And the numbers here for Terran are just looking so freaking good. He decides to push deeper onto creep. A bunch of units are a little bit overly exposed, and they do end up going down pretty much immediately. Zergling run by again, though, and this is what Reynor is so good at, right? These lings are going to be able to deal a lot of damage. What about the army, though, of the Terran player at the front? No burrowed banes over here, no scans, though, to really confirm it. Maru decides to just go after multiple bases now. Orbital command is forced to lift off. We have reinforcing Terran units showing up eventually. There's another base all the way at the bottom of the map, but this attack here from the Terran player is really hurting. He is so deep onto creep that he needs to pre-spread his units just to try and mitigate the Baneling splash damage. The Zerglings from the counterattack are coming back home. They have been very successful. Reynor with a 30 worker advantage right now, but the drones don't have easy places to be mining from. The Marines, though, that were a little bit too far forward do get sniped. In the meantime, there are all of these units that were built in a natural expansion of Maru. They were waiting there for a little while, trying their best to reinforce this. Terran army is super disjointed here. Zerg wants to go around the site. Reynor needs to buy time. The more mining he can do, the better. These workers, though, in the far bottom right are not mining. He actually has not sent them to the mineral line, hoping to not really show his opponent. The banelings here are burrowed. He does get a good baneling mine. In the meantime, the lings go in, but this Terran army is looking mighty dangerous. +2 attack, by the way, is going to finish up here for the Zerglings in just a few seconds' time. Absolutely critical for Zerg to keep this one around, and he will be able to finish it. Zerglings still hitting the main base. The third now also gets denied here as Maru wants to continue mining. He's pushing slowly but surely towards the soft underbelly of the Zerg. If he can get into the natural in the main base, that would be big, and he's already overwhelming the natural. Does Zerg have enough to actually clean all of this up? The banelings are rolling through, the siege tanks in the back, the reinforcing Terran units going across the map. Maru completely shifting gears in this final game of the series, and he is doing so brilliantly. It's so scary to be fighting onto creep. Those banelings, they just come your way so much faster than you are used to, but Maru wins this series in the most Maru-esque way possible. And I think in hindsight, Reynor is really regretting that Zergling all-in that he did on Maganatha. That particular game, I get it after the long macro match, but I don't think he would do that a second time around. Phenomenal series, though, of StarCraft 2. Maru played really well. A variety of mech flavors, right? The ways in which he gets there are different every single time. Even with a double barrack start, he can still follow it up with mech. We obviously saw the transition as well from like vanilla mech in the mid game straight to ghost mech in the late game. Super cool. And then in this final game, a good old 8 Rex all-in. Executed to pretty much perfection, other than that little supply block at 141. That was a little unfortunate.